Hello, and thank you for coming and joining us on our channel here today. We're going to be doing a question and answer period. If we've done one of these before, and we're going to carry on.
So we're a large adoptive family. We have 18 children, and we have multiple special needs within our family, and our channel is vlogging about the different experiences as a large adoptive family with multiple special needs.
Yeah, so we've had some requests on ideas that Debbie and I can do for a question and answer. And today we're going to do a Q and A on how long have we been homeschooling and all about homeschooling. It's a homeschooling question and answer. So how long?
So we've been homeschooling for 8 years. And we are currently homeschooling kids from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12.
That's right. And specifically, the grades that we're covering right now: kindergarten, grade 1, grade 3, grade 4, 5, 6, 8, and like Debbie
12.
says, grade 12. So that's our range right now that we're homeschooling in. So we have 8 children that are homeschooled altogether. Question: what made you initially to decide to homeschool?
So we were actually diehard public school parents, and
Totally not homeschool at all. Totally not homeschool.
the experiences that we had with other homeschool families had really steered us away from that. And when we went to enroll Dean into school, he was incontinent. He had a severe speech and swallowing issues. He had epilepsy and multiple challenges. And
he still has a lot of these things as well. They haven't all gone away. As you've met Dean before, if you've watched some of our previous videos, you'll know that Dean still has a difficult time with speech.
But he is a lot better than he was at the kindergarten age.
That's correct. We could not understand really a word he was saying. He had to use a combination of pointing at things, grunting, and trying to get his point across somehow using whatever method that was working for him that particular day, because some days it changed.
And there was a lot of safety issues around his needs that he needed to have an education assistant with him all the time because of his safety issues, just to keep him safe. And when we enrolled him into the public school system, because we actually did enroll him, and we had our first meeting with the school district and the school that we were enrolling him into, and they told us that he would not get an aid, that he qualified for an education assistant, but that education assistant was going to be used to backfill and support other students within the school.
Even though Dean has very, very high special needs, they pretty much waived those out. We're not talking about the student support services in our district. This came right from the school itself. Now, in British Columbia here, once you go through the long drawn-out process and a very long drawn-out process of getting your student a designation as special needs that qualifies for funding, that doesn't stop there, because from that point it goes to the school itself, and then the school can decide how they want to utilize the position of a educational assistant. And unfortunately, the school, as all schools were, at least at the time, and I'm not sure if it's much different now, the schools have a very difficult time making ends meet. Very short on funding, and they have to allocate resources the best way they know how for all students. Unfortunately, they were going to use the educational assistant that was assigned to Dean to backfill the other ones for their breaks. Therefore, Dean would really not get much, if any, actual one-on-one time. And a child with that many challenges would just be, unfortunately, probably either put into a back room somewhere, maybe a resource room or something like that, and just told, well, keep yourself busy or whatever, look at this or color that. I'm busy doing other things.
So long story short, we decided that we were going to look into other options for him, and we decided to homeschool through a distributed learning school, which we'll explain a bit more in a moment about that. So we decided we were going to homeschool Dean in a distributed learning school, and that was the start of our homeschooling.
Yeah, and we still had some children that were in public school at that particular time.
Over time, we ended up bringing a few of them home because they wanted to come home and do homeschooling that way, and others graduated through the public school system. And then as the younger ones became of an age to start school because their needs were similar to Dean's, we just automatically decided that we would do the homeschool route for them.
Yeah, here in British Columbia, here in Canada, there's multiple ways that a family can homeschool. So you mentioned distributed learning. What is distributed learning here, and how is that different from other ways of homeschooling here in BC?
So as a distributed learning homeschooler, we are registered with a actual school, and we are overseen by a special education teacher. There's a principal, vice principal. They do all of the reporting and everything, and we have to follow the BC curriculum for educating our children.
So the education for the children is in no way different whatsoever from what the public school does. We are required to follow the curriculum here in British Columbia set out by the Ministry of Education.
So our kids' schooling is a little bit different because they have such significant special needs that their program is modified. Some of the other children that their challenges are just a little bit different than others, they are adapted, but the modified ones, we are pretty much following direction from our special education teacher, our speech therapist, our physical therapist, and our occupational therapist, along with the doctors, to come up with a curriculum that works for them. And we are starting where they're at and working our way up so that they are still learning, but there's no way that they would be able to keep up with their peers in their appropriate grade levels.
Yeah, so like Debbie said, there's a way of doing the regular curriculum. It can be adapted or it can be modified accordingly, and it does have ramifications long term. Whether it's they can graduate with a full graduation certificate or an adult education certificate, depending on how far they're modified or adapted, depending on the situation.
So if a child's adapted, they still have to meet the same curriculum goals. They just can show their learning in a different manner. So if they weren't able to write, they might be able to do a computer presentation, as long as they're able to show their learning in whatever manner. A child that's modified, that's just like it sounds, and it's modified, and they might be doing something completely different. So for instance, our children that are modified, some of them are still learning to read, and they're in grade 6. So you can see that a typical grade 6 child already knows how to read, but some of ours are just learning. Some are just learning how to print. Some are still learning how to count, depending on their abilities. But we're still working towards those goals. So a child that's modified typically doesn't meet the requirements for a dogwood, which is the name of our graduation certificate. But they could, if they've learned enough, you could work towards an adult dogwood, so an adult graduation certificate, which the requirements are a little bit different. So there is still a potential of graduating with a graduation certificate. It just depends on the child and how we plan for them with their support teachers.
Yeah, so we have a lot of support teachers here, and we'll get into that here in a moment. But let's talk about staffing. So we have staff here. Who hires our staff?
So our distributed learning school hires education assistants to come and work in our home with our children. So we do have say. So the school will initially interview them and they'll say, I think this person's a good fit, but we have the final say because these people are going to be working in our home with our children.
Yeah, so our home is also, as the name refers to, is homeschooling. So it's also like a place of employment for quite a few people here, as well as it's our home. So it has to be a good fit. So we're very, very thankful because our homeschooling group that we're with here, they do all that pre-screening for us to make sure that everything, sort of the ducks are in order. They take care of the administration part of it. But like Debbie says, we have the final say. We get to interview and everything else. We do.
And we're quite different than others that have children with special needs that are schooling because of the sheer volume of children that we are schooling. We're homeschooling 8 children with special needs, so we're getting support for 8 children. So that does play into what our school looks like within our home.
Yeah, so once again, final hiring is all done through the homeschooling group. They get their funding, of course, from our Ministry of Education, which is one of the government ministries here in British Columbia. So how much time is spent schooling? Do we have set schooling hours? How does that look for us?
So we do have set schooling hours because we are employers. We have people that are coming to work here, so that we try and keep it as set as possible. So the younger children school 3 days a week, 1 day a week, or the 4th day of the week, they are doing community activities. So they're doing their therapeutic riding, they're doing their singing lessons, their piano lessons. So it is still school, but it's a community-based schooling for that day. And then the 5th day for the younger children is used for appointments because they have so many appointments that we actually have to have a day set aside to manage all of their doctor's appointments. The high school kids, they are schooling 5 days a week. So they are going to class 5 days a week from 9 till 3 because academically they need that time and they don't have the medical appointments like the younger children do.
Yeah, so here in British Columbia, the elementary years are considered from kindergarten right through to grade 7, and then high school is grade 8 right through to grade 12, just so you guys know out there. Another question we get all the time from people, and this is everywhere we go, when do we, as Debbie and I, get downtime if the kids are at home all day and all night? How do we do that?
So when we do have the education assistants, although having the education assistants doesn't mean that they do all the work and that we have nothing to do. We do a lot of the administration and the planning, and if children aren't feeling well or there's behavior issues, we are there to support. So we do try and take a little bit of the time when the education assistants are here to have some time for ourselves. We also have respite, so we have somebody that will come in and watch the kids so that we can get out and have some time together.
Yeah, we try to do that once a week. We try to get out, just the two of us, away from the kids. We hire someone to come in. Obviously, the people that work here have to be very highly skilled to work with these types of children with their special needs and things like that. So,
and we also spell each other off so that
yes,
we can go and do things of our own interest without being at home all the time.
Yeah, sounds good. Another question that comes up all the time, and I know this is something that that we thought about as well before we started homeschooling, socialization for the children. We had the, I guess, mindset at one time that children that were homeschooled never socialized outside the home. They didn't get a chance to meet other kids. They didn't really have friends, and they were sort of confined to the family unit and the family home and anything else. Now, I know some of you, probably most of you, have seen a lot of our videos. It's pretty obvious that our children are out there in the community on a regular basis. So talk about socialization.
So I'm going to start with our daughter that's in grade 12. When she came home to homeschool, she was in grade 8, and she was being bullied a lot at the public school system. And she had to work so hard at school to do her academics and try and get along and all of the socializing that goes in with the high school life or the schooling life. And then she would be in some after school activities like Air Cadets or St. John Ambulance or just a variety of after school activities. And she was working so hard that to keep everything together that she actually wasn't socializing. She wasn't able to put the effort into the socializing part because everything else took all of her energy. We found when she came home to do her schooling that she was actually able to concentrate on her schooling with the support of the education assistants and ourselves. And then when she went to do the social activities, she actually had the energy that she was able to to flourish in those environments and actually start making some friends. So for her, homeschooling actually gave her the ability to start socializing and succeeding in her outside life, outside of school. And for the other children, they are all in activities outside of the home. We also have another family that homeschools within our home. One of our education assistants, her children homeschool here, so we have up to 4 other children here that are homeschooling. And then we're working on some social groups. So we have a social group that comes, and the children, because of their special needs where they struggle with their social skills, we actually have a group within the home, and there's 4 other children on top of the 4 that are homeschooling here. So that's a total of 8 extra children that are coming into the home, and they're working on some of those skills. So if you think about that, that's 16 children in the home, which is close to a class.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that combined with all their outside activities, they're getting a lot of time to socialize, and they're getting a lot of support to be able to manage those social situations.
Yeah, and they're like Debbie said, we have the children a lot of other group activities.
We do a lot of Special Olympics. That's something new with the children that we have, right? The younger children now. When the other children were growing up, we weren't really involved in Special Olympics because a lot of them didn't fit that group. But now we have a lot that are doing Special Olympics, and they found a lot of friends that way, and they're quite successful.
Just deviating a little bit here, let's work on that a little bit for Special Olympics. So what sports do the children do?
So currently the children are doing track and field and soccer. They were doing swimming in the fall and winter, and now we're moved on to the spring sports, so we're working on track and field and soccer.
So that's just there's a lot of things that they actually do and they can do apart from what you see in the videos, going out and just being part of the community. Next question: how much does it cost to homeschool, and do the school pay for therapies and other types of supports?
So as a distributed learning school homeschooler, we do not have to pay for anything. We actually get a budget that covers our curriculum and the resources that the children need. That budget also covers the education assistants, the therapists, the specialized therapy type programs like therapeutic riding. We've done vision therapy. We have a physical therapist that comes to the house. We have a speech therapist that comes to the house. We've had occupational therapists. We're between occupational therapists right now. But the school does pay for everything that we require. So if we wanted anything on top of that, we would have to pay, but the budget that we've been allotted is covering a lot.
Yeah, and also in British Columbia here, the children have access to some autism funding as well. And do you want to talk about that a little bit, how we hire through the autism funding?
So we have 4 children that are diagnosed with autism, and in British Columbia, you get money to help support for therapies and such. So we hire therapists to come in and work in the home with the children with autism. So that having that funding also is a benefit, because although we have the school funding, sometimes we have 2 children with 1 education assistant, where when we have the behavior interventionist come in with the autism funding, we're able to have the children now one-on-one. So all the children are benefiting from the fact that we have that extra support.
Yeah. So we try to draw in funding from wherever we possibly can to be able to support the children in the best way possible. The team that's around the children is absolutely huge.
The children are very well supported, and they are making progress, which I don't know if they would if they didn't get the support that they're getting.
Right about now, I'm guessing you probably are getting a little bit of a headache out there in YouTube land and wondering, wow, how is it possible to manage all of this? Do we get paid for managing all this?
No, we don't get paid.
We don't get paid. We don't get a single penny for it. And it does take a lot of work to manage. That's what Debbie's job here is in the home. Deb puts in all the work. She does the scheduling and sometimes has to do payroll depending on where the funding's coming from. And we do the hiring. We do interviews when it comes to interventionists and support people. So it's a lot of work that's put in here to do this, and absolutely zero compensation for Debbie.
I actually do get compensation because I get to see the children succeeding, and that's compensation enough. If you see the kids from, there's been times where Dean, for instance, was pretty much bedridden, and now he's running around doing things. So seeing the difference in the children, that's a lot of compensation for us.
So you can see how homeschooling has really benefited our children here. Is there anything else that you want to add to the benefit of the children for this?
I think it's a benefit because they have so many health challenges. If they were in a public school system, they would have to go, or a private school system, they would have to miss so much time for their health issues or their doctor's issues, and that part of their schooling would be skipped. They would either have homework to do or they just would miss all of those things. Whereas us as a homeschooler, we are able to say, okay, this was the last thing that you did, and okay, you've had a seizure, you've had a doctor's appointment. We're going to continue from where we left off, or we're going to go back if you've lost some skills, and we're able to mold their schooling to them so they're able to have the best schooling possible.
Yeah, once again, a benefit. Otherwise, it creates a lot of gaps in their learning. And when they have gaps in their learning, it's very difficult for the children to be able to, how would you say, catch up and try to fill those gaps in. Quite often, it's one of those things you take one step forward and sometimes two steps backwards.
And they struggle so much to start with, so they really need that extra support, and they're able to get that at home.
So, another question. Do your children ever ask why they don't go to public school, and do they like being homeschooled?
So the ones that are older, that they did actually have some time in public school and it was their choice to come home, so they don't ask because they understand why, and they like being homeschooled because if you make a joke or a comment, well, maybe you should go back to public school, there's been lots of upset about that, and there's no way, and if you make me, I'm going to quit school.
Yes. Drawbacks. What are the drawbacks to homeschooling?
There's the drawback that the children are always here and it's a lot of work. But having said that, when we had special needs children in public school, we got phone calls just about every day. Can you come and pick up? Your child did this. So at least when they're at home, we've already caught what they were doing, and we might not have the quiet at home, but we didn't really have that before because we had the phone ringing all the time.
That's right, and made it very difficult to work some days because I was having to leave work sometimes if Debbie was at appointments with somebody else and just stop work, go to the school. I was very fortunate to have a very, what would you say, understanding management for the place that I worked, and would allow me that time to be able to go and deal with what I need to deal with. But it's not conducive to a good work environment for myself either, for having to do that.
But
so
having
very
them
disruptive.
At home is actually better for Sean going to work, so he's able to go to work, and for the most part, everything can be managed at home.
Yes. So we're coming down to the last couple of questions here. Do we ever get negative comments when people find out that we homeschool, or are people usually supportive?
People are usually pretty supportive, and they're usually pretty overwhelmed, like, wow, how can you do that? Because a lot of people don't understand that you get the education assistance and the different supports that you get when you're homeschooling with special needs children. So they look at the children and they can see that they have some significant challenges, and they're just overwhelmed, like, how could anybody do that? And we're not doing it by ourselves. We have support.
Yeah. Okay. Our last question here. Do you think homeschool is something that would be beneficial to all families and children?
No.
Definitely not. I would absolutely say not.
I really think you have to look at each circumstance individually, and I can't say that homeschooling is going to be the perfect thing for us for the rest of the kids' schooling. Things can change, and you have to be flexible and be able to change with the needs and requirements of your family. And other families need to know, need to look at, seriously, is this something that they can manage, or is it too much for them, or what would work for them, they really need to consider that.
Yeah, it's very convenient for a lot of families. Both parents are working, and a child that goes to school allows them to be able to go out and earn an income for their family. So homeschooling is definitely not for everybody. But I guess what people really have to ask, and something that we did, is the simple thing of what's in the children's best interest. And we felt that the public school system, in its day when we were there, was no longer benefiting the children, and this would be a much better program to go through. So what's in the children's best interest has really been our motto right from day one when it comes to adoption and stuff like that, even with our biological children originally. And we try to follow that principle of what's in their best interest, keeping in mind that there are some restrictions in the world, quite obviously.
And at the end of the day, it's really up to the parents, because you can send them to school and you've got a teacher that's working with them for 1 year. And yes, public school or the private school teachers are dedicated, but at the end of the year, they're finished and you're still the parent and you still have that child that you're trying to help them progress to adulthood. So at the end of the day, the parent's the one that's there.
And we definitely, I just want to throw this in at the end here. We have a lot of people that we know that are teachers, and we have a very high respect for teachers. It doesn't matter if they're in the public school system, private school system, or in the homeschooling system. We have friends that are people that I would call friends that are in all those areas. And we know that they are doing the best they possibly can within the confines of what they're allowed to do in the classroom, and of course budget restrictions and everything else. So as Debbie said, at the moment, this is the best for our children, but that doesn't mean that maybe some point down the road that we would switch, would think about switching back or not. It really depends on what's in the children's best interest at that particular time.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, please leave a comment down below, or you can email us. Our contact information is...
So you can give us a thumbs up or thumbs down as well. Whichever you like. Don't forget to click the bell. That will notify you of the next videos, and probably most importantly, share the videos, please. We would like to see our subscriber base come up a little bit, and we'd like to see lots of comments coming in so that we can do more of these questions and answers for you. We quite enjoy doing them.
So if you have a question on this topic, leave a question for us and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And at maybe some point in the future, we will look at doing some live broadcasts here where you can actually ask questions right online, and we'll try to answer those questions as we go. Anyways, thanks again, everyone.
Thanks.